This is Mikey Mason, and you're listening to Why We Game.
I'm Brodor, and this is Why We Game. My guest today is Danielle Reynolds. She is the leader hostess of Game Design Unboxed, Inspiration to Publication, a podcast that is a member of the Known Direction Network. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. When we were sort of chatting on Facebook, and I was talking to Kathleen about breaking my arm, and then you chimed in. I was like, oh, I didn't know. Okay, so I looked into who you were and kind of going back and forth. I was like, well, so very, very cool. So it's a small world. I was stalking you on Facebook and saw that we have quite a number of mutual friends that I know from my days as a Geek Way to the West convention board member.
I was like, oh, that's so funny. I was just talking to a different board member today.
Oh, we're very cool.
Yeah.
You have been, if I'm not mistaken, you've been a gamer since you were really young, like in the elementary school sort of age. You've been playing games that were, let me use the phrase, esoteric compared to the mainstream long before a lot of your peers were.
I was, but that honestly is just thanks to some family friends, the Godwins. They live like a block away, and they were kind of like babysitters except friends. Like we would go over there and he would just have some new game that I had never heard of. It wasn't something you really saw in stores. Like he had things that weren't just Monopoly or Clue. And yeah, I mean, he's mostly the reason that I started to be really into games and like continued through aging, like into college, just like having these game nights where I would do what my friends like to call pulling a Danielle, which is inviting a crazy amount of people from totally different aspects of my life into a room to play games. And so that's like what I was known for in college. And I will say in college I went more party games because, you know, not everybody's cup of teas. Well, the more gamery games.
How many people would you have at these gatherings, and how do you make them viable, right? Because you've got to split into different groups and play different games.
You would think that, but I'm not going to lie. Imagine those dorm rooms that are basically cells in a jail. I would throw like 20 people in there, and we would be playing like catchphrase, or I'd have like 11 people, and we'd be playing like loaded questions or game of things or, like categories or something or Pictionary. I honestly put way too many people in my dorm room. A little uncomfortable.
So how old are you?
So I am 27. I turned 27 this September.
Okay, so you're in the category of what for my gamer generation theory that I'm working on. I'm a Gen 2 gamer, right? So my parents were gamers in the late 70s. I became a gamer in the mid 80s. So I'm sort of the sort of Satan spawn from the Satanic Panic era style gamer. But you became a gamer in the golden age of the hobby. I'm so jealous, right? Because when I was 27, it was still not a cool thing to do.
Oh, I'm not going to say I'm cool. Believe me, everyone called me a nerd and a geek and a dork or all those things. But the nice thing is you don't look at me and think like, oh, she's such a geek. But as soon as I start talking, they're like, oh my God, what is this girl talking about? She owns how many board games?
So how many board games do you own?
Since I'm moving, I actually just donated / sold 200 and I still have a lot. Don't actually know the number, but it was interesting, like, figuring out what to get rid of. It's one of those, if you're ever looking to try to bring your board game number down, think in the mindset you're moving states away, and that's going to really help you out.
You're in the Chicagoland area, right?
I am, yeah, right now. But in a week and a half, I will be moving up to the East Coast to work, actually, at a game-related job. I'll be working at GPI Game Manufacturing.
Congratulations. That's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's like a dream job, so I'm willing to relocate to a place I know no one.
No, that's fantastic. Now, you have been, when you got to college, that sort of reignited your passion for gaming?
College reignited it, because honestly, like, college is, you're playing games anyway. Like, the only difference is it wasn't all drinking games for me. But I would say it got more reunited in like 2017 when I met this awesome guy named Ryan Costello, who became kind of a mentor for me. I showed up to a Comic-Con known as C2E2 in Chicago. It's like probably our biggest one we have. And I was like cosplaying as Mary Marvel, the like black suit one. I don't know if you've seen the Shazam movie.
I have.
She's in it. Okay, yeah, so she's in it. And I like chose a very specific outfit of hers to show up with some coworkers, which the coworkers at the time ditched me, which was rude. But had they not ditched me, I wouldn't have started talking to this random Canadian company called Blind Ferret Entertainment that at the time was doing Board Game Bento. They had a few games like based off of their webcomics. And I was just talking to them and they felt bad because I was wearing these like stiletto heels. And they're like, hey, you want to sit down and just chat and eat some cookies that some fan made? I was like, I'll pass on the cookies. But yes to the chair. As you know, conventions do not have many chairs. And I just started talking to Ryan and we ended up becoming friends. At the time I worked at Fujifilm Graphic Systems. So I was like managing their showroom, showing off like these $3 million printers. So I got to use all the printers too. So we actually ended up like doing kind of a partnership trade-off where they let me go to Gen Con. They paid for like an exhibitor pass and all that good stuff. And I did the graphics for their booth. So, I mean, I'd say win-win because we know how much that can cost. And that was the first time I got to go to a Gen Con was in 2018 and kind of between Ryan and going to that first Gen Con. And I also went out to Montreal to visit him and I got to play Catan and some of the like, I shouldn't say that's new, but like that is what really reignited my love and passion. And I realized like this is something I need to do.
Your reintroduction to the hobby, though, was not that long ago. And what's really interesting to me is that just the rate at which you have burned deep into the hobby in terms of participating not only professionally to go work for GPI, but you have a number of games that you have designed. You've got a game that's actually just recently been signed.
Yeah, honestly, everybody who knows my timetable is like I shot off like a rocket. I just felt like I dove into the game design community and I actually was on the Board Game Design Lab on just like how to do that. Like what are the areas you need to get into if you really want to make this your career? Like I kind of decided like, hey, this is a great combination of my skills. I went to college for graphic design and psychology. So I like talking to people. And I love creating things and like I love seeing a product that's fully made. So, I mean, this was perfect. I'd made games when I was like a little kid for like elementary school. Like I forced everyone to play this handmade Digimon game I made at recess, which I think my mom still has the board. So if I ever find that, if it hadn't been thrown out, I should really take a picture of it. But yeah, I kind of just like shot through and I said yes to a lot of things, and that is honestly one of my New Year's resolutions is to comment on the yeses, because I am a part of way too many things. You name a subject of gaming, and I've probably either volunteered or I'm currently doing it.
You're a big comic book fan, yeah?
I'm a huge comic book fan.
Well, what do you dig?
Oh my gosh. So because of my age, I was very much into the teen sidekick superheroes.
Nothing wrong with that.
Like the Teen Titans. I read like Birds of Prey, Young Justice, the Young Avengers, Runaways, like a lot of.
Oh God, Runaways. That comic was so flippin' good until Joss Whedon shit the bed.
Yeah, actually, like, the Hulu show wasn't even that bad. I mean, it could have been better, but as far as representation went, it was really nice. But, yeah, I loved all those. I really enjoyed the teams. I was also into, like, Justice League, Ultimate Spider-Man. I love the Ultimate Spider-Man. That was great. And a lot of the Ultimate comics I was a fan of. But I definitely geared more towards DC, even though I do love and appreciate Marvel. And I know more about both of those categories than probably most Americans.
Right on.
I can definitely keep up a good conversation on their backstories and where they are. Definitely gotten out of it recently, though. I don't read as much.
I can't, man. I used to work for a local chain that sold gaming and comic books. And then, because it was part of my job, I followed comics, sort of peripherally because I needed to be in the know, so to speak. But, I mean, once I left there and I bailed, and my passion was always, as douchey as it sounds, in sort of those weird, independent, Vertigo, Garth Ennis sort of, those very bizarre, teenage boy power fantasy garbage, which I just adore, right?
Yeah. No, I'd say most of what I read was DC and Marvel, but occasionally I would read some Image comics or some Vertigo comics, which I think Vertigo has just now been relabeled like Black Label DC. It's always fun. I still read some of them. I'm actually reading, I don't know if you watched the show Legend of Korra, but
indeed.
Season on into graphic novels. So I've been reading that recently because I got a little obsessed again when I went back onto Netflix.
So I haven't read any of the Korra comics, but I have read most of the Avatar graphic novels that have come after the show. And agreed, they're just as darn good as the show. They're just fantastic. Just fantastic. So when you are a theme-first designer, right? I mean, you're going to look at a theme.
Oh, yeah.
How much of your design background and education go into influencing your theme and vice versa?
Honestly, like most people, because I was more theme focused, like I come up with a theme or an idea that I think is really cool. And my weaker spot was mechanics because I kind of jumped into it only, 2 years ago. I just had to keep playing and playing and playing as many games as I possibly could to kind of reinforce and learn that. But also a lot of the themes that I have created are ones that aren't really out there, which I've definitely found is a struggle when you are pitching to publishers, because with a new theme, you could have a success like Wingspan where everyone's like, oh my God, I need this bird game. It's amazing. Or you have it where they're like, why would this sell? No one's going to play this. Everyone wants to play space train fantasy games, which I personally find to be most of them a little overdone.
Thematically, what are the things that attract you to a game?
I like it when it's something different, something out there that I haven't seen. I'm a big fan of Genius games because they actually make learning kind of fun. These are games that I would have never thought I would need a game about cytosis or a game about particles, but I play it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm unintentionally learning, but it's just so interestingly different that it grabs my attention. I mean, that's similar to when I'm walking into a game store. If I see some really great cover art about this subject that I like, it's like, oh my God, I want to try this game. I mean, that's also just me. I know a lot of people that mechanic is very much what they need. They go on the BGG page, they read through all the comments, or they watch the review videos. And I'm more oh, that title and oh, that game description and of the theme, that kind of pulls me in. And then I look into it a little bit more.
Do you find that there is a mechanic style that you gravitate toward as a player?
Not even a little bit. Honestly, even when I'm designing games, every single one of my games is so incredibly different. All their themes are different. With the exception, I have one trash game, a dumpster diving game, and then I have one that's a recycling game. Those are the only two that are kind of similar-ish in theme. But no, as far as games go, playing them, I just want to play something new. I am that friend that you want to have over because I will not complain about anything you put down. Do you want to put a war game? I'll try it.
There's no game style that you find repellent?
I wouldn't say repellent. No, there's definitely ones that I am learning I am less into. And I actually I enjoy Euro games, but because of the time commitment, I put off of doing them more so. And that's also with my designs. I try to keep the games to I'd say hour and a half is the longest I have a game that plays. Most of them I keep more around the 45, 30 minutes. Me and my schedule, I have too many things I'm doing.
Your design then, if I understand correctly, when you're doing design, you're juggling a variety of different projects, sort of a Da Vincian style of, I've got a variety of things on my plate, right?
Basically, yeah. I think I have around 11 designs that I'm currently working on, and they're all at different stages. Some I'm doing that you just wait and see if the publisher is going to decide they want it. I have some that I'm pitching. I have some that are towards the end of play testing. And then I have ones that I'm just really starting to play test, or I had to shelve it. So it's kind of just going back and forth between the different designs. Not to say that I get bored, but I know my play testers, since I do a lot of the different online groups, eventually no one wants to really keep playing the same game with minor tweaks. So I kind of try to mix it up a little bit with those. But it's also hard because you really do sometimes need to focus on that end of the development of your game, because I love the initial creation of an idea. And once you're playtesting, I will say towards the end, I'm a little bit like, oh my God, I really just like, I want this game to be signed already. Like, this is just such a tiny little playtest that I'm really just getting numbers to make sure it's balanced at this point. Makes me want a co-designer that does it for me.
Right. That's the kind of thing that I would want to delegate to an intern, right? So I'm going to have my intern is going to do and start in playtest and gather all my data for me and let me do that.
Oh my God, for real. You have no idea. It's one of those things that I'm just like, you love your game, you love your design, but there's a point where you're playing your design way too many times and you're just wishing that you could delegate it to someone else. But of course, unless you like have a lot of blind play testers that are very willing, yeah, not doing a lot of that.
Well, and whom you trust to recognize, quality feedback, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be...
I'm happy to say the people I play test with, like, they will give it to me straight. If they hate a change I made, they hate a change I made. And that's like right now with having signed a new game with a publisher, we're going towards the development side. So, of course, like many publishers will have things that they want to try out that are different from the design that they signed on for. And it's like that's something before you sign the contract you either agree to or you don't agree to. I was open to it. And I will say that it has been very interesting because they have had a lot of changes, and I will say a lot of them have tanked epically, which always reassures that my initial design is solid, but it also is a little bit frustrating to look at this game basically almost feeling like a new game and people just giving very interesting feedback on.
I'm going to rip your show off. I'm going to flip the script. Right?
Okay.
Because your show, Game Design Unboxed, Inspiration to Publication, you'll sit down with a game designer who has a large pedigree, but you guys drill down into one specific game.
We do. We try to aim for one game, or if it's like a series of games, like we did the trekking series, which, trekking national parks, the world, and soon to be history, I think is the working title. So, yes.
And you have two additional hosts. Now, you are leader hostess, but you have two additional hosts. Denise, whose last name I don't recall, and Ben.
She actually doesn't have her last name on there, so that is intentional.
Perfect. That is why I didn't remember it. And then game designer Ben Moy.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah. So I hate technology. I loathe it. I am from a time when the Nintendo came out and universes split. You either became a video game person or you didn't. And this is back when the Commodore 64, etc. I'm not a video game guy. I'm not a tech guy. I'd really rather have this conversation face to face in real world. And I have plenty of technical challenges and difficulties interviewing people in this format. How in the heck do you guys do it with 3 hosts and a guest?
That is an excellent question, especially because we do not record with any kind of video. So when we record, we use Zencaster, which has been great because it does record everyone's audio on separate tracks, which for me being someone who had to learn how to edit audio to do the podcast, because I do all our editing, and hopefully we're going to be having someone new doing that starting in 2021. Fingers crossed, will be added to the DMR Creative Group. But until then, I'm editing. So our way of doing it that we have found helpful through just like trial and error is we use an Excel like Google sheet. And so from this Google sheet, we have our own different colors. We have like a list of questions that we would like to touch on. I tend to send like a good majority of the questions to whatever designer that we're going to be talking to. So that way they can kind of think about it. And for the most part, we've had no issues. We had one designer that thought straight up we would be asking like boom, boom, boom each question. He got very thrown off when like random questions came up because during conversation, people come up with new questions.
Yeah, you get to a point where you want someone to, expound on something, you want to drill down onto a particular subject, et cetera. Yeah, it's just you want the conversation to be natural, and just reading rote questions is uninteresting.
Exactly. So trying to balance that out, we had the questions, and what we would do is just kind of like highlight if one of us wanted to like ask the next question, just to kind of help a little bit so we weren't talking over each other. But of course you have the issues of, you want to expand on something, but you don't want to step on someone else's toes. So a lot of it has been kind of trial and error. And me and Ben have been in every single episode. Denise comes in and out because right after she agreed to being a part of the team, she ended up getting a very large promotion. So she's like kind of in and out, but I love her. And I'm glad that she's still deciding to be a part of the team, even with how much she's got on her plate. But yeah, so honestly, we work off of this Excel sheet to try to indicate like, hey, I want to talk next, or like I came up with this new idea. But I will say, because I am a little bit chatty, I do feel like sometimes I do a little too much of the talking, and I try to like get someone else to go. I'm like, come on, Ben, because he's a very chatty person in person and on social media, but he is like very contained and calm in the podcast, which I think is very interesting to me, because when I was like deciding on who I wanted people I trust and people that like brought different things to the team. I was just like thrown back. I was like, is this the Ben I know? Like what's going on here?
Well, and he's
so much more adult.
Well, he's super polite, right? I mean, he's deferential to everyone. He's super polite. He doesn't want to interrupt. I do a different podcast with some other guys, which, you know, whatever. I mean, it's all people that are big personalities, all in the same room I mean, so you've got to fight to get a word in edgewise. So I have an opposite problem.
I know. No, we are very much like, no, you go, you should go, you do the next question. I just like talked for this much time. I mean, we're here for the designer. Like, we want them to take up 80-90% of the talking, and us just be there to like give them a platform, ask a question. And it's been nice having, like, as weird as it is to have that many co-hosts sometimes, it is great because they think of things I would never have thought to ask, which is awesome. And that's what we want, because we want to be able to cover subjects that isn't just one perspective, which would have been my perspective. And my perspective isn't always right.
I hear that. I mean, that's certainly the challenge of doing a one-on-one interview show, is that, you know, I certainly have to carry or at least make sure that I have the momentum of the show, and I don't have somebody to fall back on to ask questions or be smarter than me, as most people are.
Exactly. And it's nice with scheduling, because if ever for some reason I can't make it, I have 2 people that are there to help me out.
Yeah, no, but what provides me is that I'm wicked flexible, right? You know, working from home and then doing this, I really can just, whatever works for you, I'll make it happen, right? But let's talk about Innkeeper.
Sure.
You know, out of all of your designs, and you have a number of them that you've juggling, a number of them that are on your website. Out of all of your designs, what was it that took Innkeeper to be the one that was the first to get signed?
You know, that is an interesting question, because honestly, I had 3 designs at the same time, kind of like at that finish point that I was pitching. And during quarantine, I've been doing a lot of the like online speed pitching, where you just apply to it, because I mean, that's what we have to do right now. That's kind of our options. We don't really get to pitch in person. And it just happened that Innkeeper, I did the Metatopia speed pitching event. I talked to a few different publishers, and there were 2 that wanted to follow up, like play the game. And one the next day was like, hey, let's get on a phone call. And they talked to me. They're like, we want your game. We love you, which was always nice. Like, it's nice when they're not only judging your game, but you as a person, since you are going to be spending at least the next 2+ years communicating. So it's like good to know that you vibe well together. And then I had the contract, and they're like, okay, so here's the contract. You get back to us at like X time. And yeah, went from there. So honestly, I kind of thought that my game Rubbish was going to get signed before Innkeeper, because it got pitched during a different speed pitching for NunPub. And I thought that one was going to be the one that got signed first, but Innkeeper just like pitched it, and so quickly in comparison to all these other publishers I have like worked with, just got snatched up. So I was a little bit blindsided. I'm not going to lie. Like, within a week, I got offered a job that I'm taking, going to GPI. I got the game signed. I got notice that I actually have an illustration that's going to be in a game. So that's pretty cool.
Wow, you're an illustrator as well.
I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, design, literally all the things.
So when I'm looking at all the stuff on your website, then all that background art that I'm looking at, that's all graphic design that you did.
Yeah, no, I did all this stuff for my games. You will definitely notice that with the start of the games, the art is very good, high quality. So like Nutstash looks beautiful.
It does.
It looks awesome. And then you start to notice that because I have so many games and integrating things, I start using like stock photos, or I just like make some pretty, I don't know. I don't want to say like not as nice art, but let's be honest, it's not as nice art, or I use stock photos. So, yeah, no, everything I do is all me.
That's amazing. So you're like a Swiss Army knife of game designers, right? Because you have all of these tools. You're a writer. You've got your blog. You're designing games. You're doing the graphic design and art for your games. I mean, you would be a steal for one of these companies to scoop up and say, hey, we want you to be in-house because your skill set is amazing.
Which is why GPI snatched me right up.
That's
It's funny to be on the manufacturing side, though, because I'm going to be like working in between the publishers in China, but also they do offer services like graphic design and game development, and that was the main reason they wanted me.
I know it is certainly tangential, but your game design experience, how is that going to aid you in your new position with GPI?
I mean, for one, I actually understand all sides of game design now, because I've been on the side where, like, I did run a Kickstarter. I ended up canceling it because it was either just barely going to fund or it wasn't going to fund, and that was my first game design, Nut Stash. Gosh, it was like a year and a half ago that I canceled it. So it's like I actually know approximately what things cost, so that was a nice contributor. I worked at a print place when I worked at Fujifilm, so I actually understand a lot of the different materials that the games are made up of. And then with like game design, I mean, I know all about the different components, the like rules. I can like look through all that artwork and actually understand where it needs to go, where it needs to be placed to get printed properly. So it's like kind of a nice combination of previous like jobs out of game design, but also just being inside of it. I can look at a game because some of the publishers that reach out to GPI, they actually like need continual development, and we would do that. So it's like, okay, well, I can help develop it because I can see where the problem areas are. Because since I do run an online game playtest group, and also I used to run a personal, like in-person one, I have definitely played so many playtestable games that I know how to give constructive feedback and kind of notice what works and what doesn't work, and maybe what doesn't look as graphically pleasing. Like I said, on my website, you'll notice that I start to kind of get lazier on some stuff. Keep going there. Look at the earlier games. They look a lot prettier.
I think that you are one of the most remarkably marketable employees I've ever encountered. Your skill set is amazing. I'm super, super impressed. But also, I'm envious of your drive. I mean, at 27 years old to be where you're at is amazing. I've never been that person, right? I mean, at 45, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing in my life.
Like I said, it was saying yes to a lot of things because I used to do a lot of charity events. I worked booths at most of the different conventions I went to because that was like the way I could afford to be there. So I worked conventions at like Gen Con, Origins, PAX Unplugged for the past like 2.5 years or whatever it's been. I'm on the advisory board for Unpub. So it's like I just like volunteered so much that they wanted me on the board.
And for people that don't know, what is Unpub?
Sure. So it's like unpublished games. Basically, they have a convention that is in, oh my God, I'm blanking on it right now. It's on the East Coast. I'll remember it, I'm sure, later.
Right on.
But, yeah, so, I mean, it's just a convention that is also like a mini pub that also goes into different other conventions. Like I know PAX Unplugged does a miniaturized one, but basically designers who have games that are not finished will bring them there to get playtesters. It's similar to like a proto spiel, but since we had, the pandemic, everything had to move online, and so they moved that online, and we started calling it Nunpub because we're not able to then.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's great because I was in charge of the panel track, so I got to help like figure out the technology, OBS, and we're switching to StreamYard. So that was like another thing I got forced into learning. I'm one of those yes people that says yes even if they're not qualified, and I just make myself qualified. And I will say, like, if anyone ever wants to do what I did so quickly, just say yes and figure it out.
Right on. Yeah, so the cliched fake it till you make it.
Oh my God, for sure. That's literally my life. That's how I strive. Just do it with enough confidence. Like if you sound like you know what you're talking about, people think you know what you're talking about.
That's excellent advice. Would you mind walking me through the basic mechanics, sort of the elevator pitch, if you will, which, reading your blog, you certainly have an affinity for giving a solid elevator pitch on a game. What's the elevator pitch on Innkeeper?
Innkeeper is, we'll start with theme because that's where I like to start. So basically, imagine yourself, you are a customer walking down a street and you have competing inns trying to pull you in. And so the idea is a card is flipped over. The customer card is going to have like a suit on it because the initial game, whether or not it's going to stay, was like a trick-taking hybrid. So every player has their own innkeeping board. So on the board, there's 8 slots that are kind of like empty and they all have an amenity on there. So I know anyone who used to go to hotels, I don't know if they're still going, but sometimes you really want like good parking or you want like a mini fridge or breakfast included or whatever. So I just chose some generic symbols that people could identify, put them on there. So the customer card gets revealed. We're all playing to try to get the customer card. So the idea is if it is a luxury customer, it is a customer that got a lot of money. So you want to play the highest card and the cards go 1 to 15. Now, if it's a budget customer, they don't have as much money. So you're going to play a low card to them. The idea is with trick taking, you're normally trying to go for like the high numbers, but I kind of wanted to flip it and have it so all cards are useful because that's kind of a thing people complain about is if you get a hand of all low cards, you know, you're kind of screwed normally. And I mean, a lot of people do try to like add different rules in to make them worth something. So that's like kind of how I designed it. I was like, okay, now everything is worth something. And even the middle becomes worth something. So if you have like a 7, what you're doing is when you win a card, you win with the card that you played. So maybe it's a luxury customer that wants to have their pet. So it's got a little paw print and you played a 15. So the idea is similar to like Welcome To, where you have to put everything in sequential order from the numbers. You're going left to right on the bottom floor up into the second floor. And so you're going to be placing them. And if you match the amenity that you won with on the customer card to the room that offers the amenity, you're going to get 3 points and you'll place a little meatball. If it doesn't match, you get 2 points. You place a cube, or if you can't place it, so say I had a 14 in that highest slot, so I can't fit the 15, what I can do is refer it to a different or a different inn. So I'd be like, oh, hey, so like if Ben and I were playing, I'd be like, okay, I can't fit this, like Ben, here you go. And I would just put a color cube of my color, and so we would split the points. So I get 1 point, he get 1 point. But the idea is there's also these like secondary powers. So if you're like not doing so good, it's kind of a catch up mechanism, but also a way for you to either dump bad cards, choose the next customer card, or upgrade referrals. Because some people are mean and they like to spam each other with referrals just to like have a bunch of 1-pointers taking up those primo slots. The nice thing is when you do refer, they get to choose where it goes on their board. But of course, like certain things like a 1, you're going to only want to put in the first slot because otherwise it becomes that slot is useless if you put it anywhere else. So it's a fun little game of trying to like puzzle out where you want to place these cards so it doesn't mess you up in the future, but also try to get as many points as you can by taking some riskier moves with certain numbers that maybe shouldn't go in that certain slot. But it's been a lot of fun to play test, and I'm interested to see like what parts they keep because they've talked either keeping the trick taking or even maybe pushing it more to a bidding mechanism. Because we know trick taker people sometimes don't like the hybrid like change, and some are very much like, I want cards, just cards. That's been fun. I wanted to design a game that I would like because I traditionally don't like trick taking games, and so I made one for people that don't traditionally like trick taking games.
What inspired the in-taking theme or the in-keeping theme then? Like I'm thinking of, laundering and, you're sort of a B&B sort of thing, or why innkeeping?
You know what? Like, I came up with this idea. I was listening to the Dice Tower, and I had just come back from a game design retreat where I played a ton of trick-taking games, which I'm happy to say they were really good, and they're coming out in, like, the next year or something. So I'm excited. I'm actually going to buy those ones. But I was listening to, like, just people talking about themes that are overused, and they were talking about, like, Welcome To and some other stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, it'd be kind of cool. Like if you do trick take, this is one of the only games I have thought of the mechanic first. So I was like, what if you play a trick taking game and then you have to place it like based on the number, and it's like you have to go sequential order. So like quickly that's where my mind went. And I was kind of like, what would make sense with that? And I was like, oh my God, duh, like a building. So like, why not like a hotel or something? And it's just like, it was one of those weird drives that in 15 minutes, I basically designed everything in the game. Like the core of my game has not changed since I would say like a year and a month ago on that drive that I took to Chicago. I put it out. I like sketched it up for the next time I met up, and Denise was actually the first person to ever play Innkeeper. And yeah, it's like, I mean, it started as one massive board though, but then quickly I realized that some gamers are mean and they cut it off like very slow. Like you have this huge board and they put like a really low number super high up. So then it just messed everything up. So it's like, okay, need to have separate boards because people are mean. I also needed to add that player interaction of referrals. So that like got added. And beyond that, it's been like kind of more tweaking. Like, do I have secondary powers? Do we do like a track or like what do we do there? And that's kind of where the publisher has been having me try different things, some of which are great and some of which we're going to not talk about.
Can you talk about with whom you've signed?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, so we're going to hold that.
Understood. Yeah, no. Understood. That's why I wanted to ask it in a delicate fashion.
Yes. I'm sure you'll know soon enough.
Right on.
So yeah, they've been great. Very good at communication. So that is fantastic because I have definitely heard of some publishers that kind of just go months without communication. And I'm just like every week I'm talking to them and I'm testing something new in one of these online game groups.
Do you find that situation is common with your designs where you have a game and the bulk of the game's mechanical design that you had in the beginning stays with the game? Or do your games, do they have a tendency to really evolve?
I would say they tend to really evolve. So as far as Innkeeper went, that would be my most solid like initial idea that just has basically worked the entire time. Like it was never broken. It was just how do we tweak it to make it like a little more fun or make it a little faster, a little more interesting or whatever. But the core of it has stayed the same since the first day, which I think that and Nutstash are the only two that were like that. Everything else, I guess Stargazer has kind of stayed pretty similar-ish. Yeah, everything else.
Are you sure? Because that's 3 so far.
Well, that one's not that many rules. It's pretty simple. But everything else has changed a lot. Like I'm working on this design called Daughters of Asclepius. It's based off of like a mythology that a lot of people don't know that's like Greek. And every time I play it, I get a lot of awesome feedback where everyone adores the theme. They love the like core idea of it, but it's just like tweaking it to make it a little faster, make it a little more interesting, figure out like what's the fat I need to trim because I had a lot of fat on that game because I just wanted to add like everything and make it like really thematic. But then I kind of realized like I don't actually need to do this. Like we don't actually need to have merchant cards just because Apollo got turned human and became a merchant. Like I can get rid of that. Like no one cares that much about the theme. So that's been a struggle sometimes is to really figure out like what I can cut. And I mean, like you had mentioned initially with Kathleen, like we were all talking on Facebook is how we got,
introduced. Yeah.
Introduced. Yeah. And so I had her look at it and within 20 minutes, she's like, look, this is the fat you need to cut. She's very blunt, very brutal. If you need someone to cut the fat out of your game, have her look at it. But it was great because I was like, these are these things that as a designer, you just get attached to, but it's not necessary to the game. Or maybe it is, but it's just like how you're doing it doesn't work. That's something that like took a while to get definitely through like playtesting and meeting more people and getting outside of your like groups. I have come to learn that like feedback is huge and being able to take it is a skill.
Being able to take feedback is a skill. That's something that you had to learn or develop?
I kind of did. I wouldn't say it was like hard for me, but in the beginning, and I don't know if it's like, I will say like, being a part of the Board Game Broads, talking to some girls, we do have that, I shouldn't say like inferiority or whatever, but like we sometimes will take it to heart more than other people. Like my ex would listen to people at Protospiel just like tearing apart my design. And I'm just like taking notes, smiling, joking about it. And she's like, are you okay? Like, do you need a hug? I would cry if I heard some of this stuff. And it's like, not that it was hard. Like sometimes it is hard to take feedback. Like sometimes you're like, oh my God, they completely hated my game. I need to throw it on the shelf. It's completely useless. But like getting over that hump has been something that I've definitely gotten better at. Cause in the beginning, sometimes I'd be like, oh my God, should I really do this? Like, is this just a pipe dream? Is it just like some fun craft activity I'm doing? But then I realized it's like, you know what? No, cause not everyone's going to like your game. And like, yeah, there are issues with it. This is a new design. It's not going to be perfect the first month I make it. So that's been like good to really learn and continue growing on, and being able to not just like take the negative, but like ask where it's coming from too. Cause I've learned to like get perspective from people. Cause sometimes if they hate trick taking games, there's nothing you can really do. Or if they love trick taking games that are very traditional, like they're coming from that one perspective that I'm not aiming for that audience. So it's like, I'm not going to write off the feedback, but I'm going to take it into a different category.
Have you always had your shit together?
Yeah. So this is why everybody thinks I'm like my late 30s.
You're amazing. Your parents have to be the proudest fucking people in the world.
My dad almost cried when I told him about my job. He was like, I've spent my entire life, because he's the screenplay writer. He has spent his entire life trying to get a movie made, like a Hollywood movie. And sadly, it's still a dream. And so, yes, they are very proud of me.
You seriously, I am absolutely stunned. I don't know. I'm flabbergasted is the only word I would use. All right. So going back to Innkeeper then. So you've got you've done it the opposite a couple of ways than you normally do. You come up with your mechanic first, right? And then you find a theme that you're gonna throw on it. You start doing your play testing. You're working with a game style that you don't really care for. So you challenge yourself to make something that find this style of game, but I want to enjoy it, right? Which is the great way to do anything. I mean, the best writers write the stories they want to read. The best filmmakers make the movies they want to see. The best game designers design games that they want to play, right? But you get to a point where this thing, it's part of your identity, right? It's your art. It's your creation. And now you're going to turn it over to other people for money. And I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but I mean, capitalism sucks. It's just better than every other form of government ever, right? I like money. I like capitalism, but business tends to shit on art. And my concern is that they're going to take this thing that I have created, which I do not have the testicular fortitude to put up with that sort of criticism and feedback. I would crumple like just a bag of glass. I would just break listening to feedback like that. But now you're turning it over and it's no longer yours, right? I mean, conceptually, it's no longer yours the first time you share it. It becomes a living thing that other people have access to, right? But now you're selling it. And that's got to be hard. And now they want to change it, and you can't say no because it's no longer yours.
That is a little bit hard, I will say, when we had our initial discussion. So I love the theme of innkeeping. Not to say that, like, it couldn't be changed because they have thought about it, but I think of it more as the art direction is what would make it really interesting, because with it, you could go, like, Hotel Transylvania, do all the monsters. You could go, like, I don't know, Jack the Ripper time, like, make it kind of gothic looking. You could go, like, fantasy and, like, have families of gnomes and dragons and all that stuff. So it's like, depending on the artwork, you could make it really pop. Or, I mean, it was discussed that they, like, kind of considered maybe doing, like, train theme. And I'm like, I don't want to compete against all the other train games. Like, I don't need it to be that. I want it to be something more unique and out there, which I know it's hard because as the publisher, they're the ones that are going to have the loss of money. I'm not going to have that loss. I'm either going to make money or I'm not going to make money. I mean, that's kind of why I didn't want to do it myself after, like, running a Kickstarter. I realized I much prefer to pitch to publishers because it's just so time consuming to do all that stuff. So it is hard. It's hard to, like, hear certain things where they think, like, oh, maybe this is a good idea. But then the next time they, like, see a playtest happen and they're like, oh, actually, maybe I want this instead. And, like, you can't just change your mind every single playtest. Like, you signed the game for a reason. You feel good about that. But let's not go way too far from the initial conception of the game.
Is it more common for a game designer to begin with mechanics than it is theme, or is it 50-50, 60-40?
You know, I've always wondered that. It seems like from the people I've talked to, mechanics tend to be the first thing and then theme, which is why we have so many, like, pasted on themes. But yeah, I guess that's just how your mind works, because when I don't know, my mind kind of just, like, it goes theme quick, but normally it's so quickly paired with mechanics that it's almost all at the same time. Like even in that drive, yes, I did think of the mechanics first, but it was like within 15 minutes, if not even less. Like it was an internal dialogue that I wish I could have recorded. It was just like, this works, this, yes, this. And then I just wrote it all down. Like I would keep a notebook anytime I had an idea and I'd write it down. I have so many games that I've written down that I've just not had the time to prototype yet.
See, it strikes me, and I don't know, this is just a theory I'm pulling out of my ass, but it strikes me that a lot of game designers start with mechanic so they don't fall in love with the theme, right? Because if they're going to sell this game, what's the first thing that is going to go is your theme, I suspect, versus your mechanics. I mean, the core of the game is going to be the same, but you might not end up with innkeeping. You might end up with, gnome families getting attracted into different warrens of a forest or some shit. I don't know. Yeah. Right? So for me, as a person who likes to create, man, it'd break my heart if you don't want my theme. It would break my heart.
Yeah, it is hard for sure. I will say. Because like with Rubbish, I love the idea it's like a tile removal game with like some set collecting and some push your luck. And the idea is just like you pile a crap ton of tiles, some are face up, some are face down, and you're trying to collect like just shit through all this garbage.
That's clever.
Share sets. And yeah, it's like, okay, this is the easiest setup in the world. You literally just dump the game out and then you dump it back in the box because it doesn't matter. So it's like perfect. And table presence is great. I play tested it at so many bars and I would have random strangers be like, can I come over? Because you also get to use a little shovel to flip the like tiles into the air and to make a hot mess of everything.
Now see, okay. Now then this sounds like a Mayday game sort of thing to go with like Tok Woodman and that sort of thing. So we should pitch it to them. But also not just for table presence for the bar and at a con, but for a game store. Retail experience that's my expertise, right? As a guy selling games, to be able to have a little display set up with an empty table with no game and with, basically a table talker, let us show you, teach you how to play this game. It sets up instantly sort of thing, right? And every fucking time I open the game, I dump it on the table. And every time I clean it up, I sweep it into the box as if I was a parent, as a gamer who enjoys alcoholic beverages or other substance abuse. That's the perfect game.
Oh my God, no. See, that's why I thought that would be the first one to get signed, because I had I think it's like currently with 7 publishers, just waiting on it though. But a lot of them were kind of like, I don't know about the theme, because the idea is like, yeah, you're shifting through, you're trying to like collect things. You want to build a car, you want to build a bike, or you get like extra points if you like collect a lot of canned foods or whatever. And then you have these animals. So like if you get the cat, it sits on your furniture and it makes it worth more. If the dog shows up, it's like a guard dog. So like you've been caught. So it takes your things from you. And then you have to mess up the whole pile, which is just like, it's so fun and tactile. Such an easy game.
How is this not published? I mean, this is like, to me, cash and guns level no-brainer.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that one is my family's favorite. That or Nutstash. They like that one because it's like a combination of Tenzi and what is the like war game? The one that you used to like hurt each other and try to like slap the card.
Oh, I don't know. I
don't even remember, but they love that one too.
Yeah, I don't come from my mom's side of the family, like traditional card game, cribbage with the little pegs that go around, regular hearts, stuff like that. I just don't know how to play.
Okay, I don't even remember. Maybe it might have been like Egyptian rat screw. But basically, like, you sometimes will get bloody knuckles because you're just trying to get to the card before someone else does. And so I like combined that with like Tenzi and made a game called Nutstash, where you're competing for nuts.
Right.
Chipmunks and squirrels.
And all the chipmunk squirrel art, the nutcracker, the predator cards, that's all you?
So I did the initial sketches, but actually had someone do the like illustration of it because Alan is way better at that part than me. Like you'll see my style, and Curbside is 100% all me. So at that, it is more graphically like graphic design, like shapes and sizes, where his looks more like a painting style. Like I'm just not that good at digital art because I haven't done it in so long. I've definitely gotten rusty, but he did a fantastic job turning my sketches into that. If you want to like contact me or follow me, you can follow me on like DMR Creative Group on Facebook or Creative DMR on Twitter, or we have Token Gamer, and that's Gaymer. for Instagram. And then my website, it's got information on just like digital playtests. My blog has information on like how to pitch to people, like to different publishers, how to make pitching more accessible, because actually that's a kind of cool story. I wrote this blog out, gosh, I want to say in like February, March or something, about like how to pitch to publishers. Of course, that was like when COVID was kind of just starting, so we kind of thought that was going to last a month. Yeah, so I wrote out this blog that is definitely the most seen and like passed around blog posts that I've written, and it was just like how to pitch to publishers, like here's your like survival guide. So I wrote this out. And then I had someone who messaged me that I wasn't really friends with on Facebook. And I'm not going to lie, I get a lot of this. I get a lot of like kind of creepy dudes that'll like slide into my DMs. And so it's like, oh God, another one. It
seems to me that the first thing that I would do is look at your Facebook page and read the first series of letters and plus, and then just fucking move on. Like, I mean, I'm not a smart person, but Jeebus Christ.
Yeah, no, people don't pick up on the gay part of Danielle, but whatever. So this guy, though, I opened it, and it was this really sweet message about the survival guide that I wrote out. But he talked about how he has, like, a disability. He's like, I love this, but also, like, what if you can't, like, you're in a wheelchair? What if you can't make it to conventions? What if you have a speech impediment? Like, here is just, like, a list of a bunch of different things. And I was like, oh, my God. I have never thought of these things because, like, okay, yeah, I'm technically, like, for game design, a minority in the fact that I'm a girl and I'm gay. But, like, my feet work fine. My hands work fine. I clearly, like, I have a lot of energy.
Your fucking brain works better than most.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm good. And I never thought, like, oh, my God, what if I'm not able to do one of those things? And so I wrote a follow-up, and I kind of, like, thought through. It was like, what can you do? I know there have been designers that are going to conventions and they've pitched games for other people, like whether it be for money or some exchange of like games or goods or whatever. So it's like you can have someone else do it for you. You can do different digital ones. And like because of COVID, digital pitching has become more of a thing. But it was a nice challenge for me to really think about it from a totally different perspective that I feel bad that I didn't ever think about. It's been nice writing those blogs.
And
some of them have touched on those subjects.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to. Oh, I didn't mean to step on you. I apologize. It's the lag in the tack. I'm so sorry. I'm so rude. And that's one of the things that like I don't want to get into a political discussion because I don't really understand politics. I just understand my anecdotal experience in life, and I think what you just said is a great allegory for the gaming industry and inclusion in general, right? I mean, it's mostly middle-aged, doughy white guys who were bullied because they were fucking dorks and nerds. And I don't think we just didn't think about it, right? It's just like you in pitching, you didn't think about, people who may have a disability that precludes them from attending a convention or communicating in a fashion. I think that people were just fucking happy to find a place that nobody was shitting on them. And it just took a generation for people to open their eyes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not even just these disabilities, but also you could be a single parent who has to work all the time. You could be someone who doesn't like geographically live near a location and maybe you don't have the money for a plane ticket or to drive up, or you don't have vacation time, or the vacation time you do have, you need to spend with your family. So there's just like all these different factors. And one of the most amazing people that I adore in the gaming community is Jonathan Gilmour. Back when he worked for Pandasaurus, I made a joke because I was pitching to him. I was like, oh, you must be happy I'm your last, pitch of the day, because I assumed I was the last because like the convention hall was closing. And that's most publishers. Convention hall closes. They want to go out. They want to go like get drinks or go to the different industry parties. But no, he's like, oh no, I have pitches until like, I don't even know, 11 or 12 or something. And I'm just like, what? Like, why? And he's like, well, think about all the people that work until 5 or work until 6. Like, they can't be here. Like, I want to be able to find an amazing game that is from someone who can't do the normal routines, the normal schedule. And that was so eye-opening. And I was just like, why are you such an amazing person? Like, oh my God, you're so great. And that's like the mindset I try to have. Like I try to help people. Like if I talk to someone on Board Game Broads and they're not sure about something, I try to give them as many avenues or ways to like look at things, whether it be a mentorship program or maybe connect them to a publisher that I met that like I clearly didn't have the right game for them, but like pay it forward. And I think that's like, it's definitely paid back to me in full. So it's like, I'm going to keep doing it.
Can you be monogamous with a board game? Can you pick one? I know it's a childish question and an even more amateurish way of asking it, but like out of them all, what's Danielle's jam?
It's too hard.
But it's Atlantis Rising. It's the greatest co-op game ever designed. There we go. Have you played Atlantis Rising?
I have not, but I've heard really great things.
I don't know. Do you dig co-op?
I actually do, and I know a lot of people hate co-op, but actually really enjoy them.
I used to be anti-co-op when I was far less mature. I am pro co-op now, but I am not intellectually strong enough to be a quarterback in most games. But there's so much going on. It's sort of like Spirit Island in that there's so much going on. Quarterbacking becomes challenging. But it has this wonderful worker placement, resource management, press your luck. It's one of my favorites, but any which way. I'm just always curious about, especially someone who is truly, truly passionate. What's that one thing that, if you boil it all down?
I'll give you kind of an answer to it. I'll give you as close as I can. I would say that the heart game that is like family, like just makes me think of family and like good memories would be Loaded Questions, which is not a game or a game, but that is one that I have played every single holiday of my entire life. And I have been made fun of so badly in that game. Like I'm normally the butt of the joke, but it makes it so memorable for me. So that like might be my heart game. And then I would say my like gamery game might be Wingspan, I'm not going to lie, because just like the artwork, the mechanics, the theme, the designer, like everything about it, I adore and I love. And it's one that I have introduced to my friends that are not gamers. So fun fact, literally all my best friends are not gamers. So I'm the one always introducing them to these games and like teaching rules. But every single one of them has understood it. Like they've gone from never having played anything beyond Monopoly or Clue, and they understood Wingspan because the graphics are so well done, the rules are so well laid out. It's intuitive once you start playing. And so I'd say that might be the one that I could potentially be monogamous with. Not sure if we're quite there. We're still dating. Still seeing some other, games.
Sure.
But maybe that one.
So your primary circle of people that you associate with outside of work are not gamers?
Exactly. All of my friends are mostly they're like music majors or education majors. But I'm the token nerd. I am the one that like none of them really get that. So it's like through gaming, I've like made all these awesome friends, but some of them I am getting a lot closer with. But most of my friends are not gamers, and this new job, I'm hoping to make some more like gamery friends because I'm not going to know anyone on the East Coast. But I'm mostly pulling a Danielle and just inviting people to play games that they don't know, and they always have to learn new rules.
I live in the echo chamber of the tribe, right? Like everything I do is either some form of escapism or gaming related, right? And everyone I associate with is in some way gaming related to one degree or another, and maybe that's not healthy for me.
I think it's great. I mean, honestly, sometimes I wish that was me, but yeah, it's like an alter ego almost, because my friends, most of them haven't played a majority of my designs, like maybe every once in a while they have. But I tend to test it on random people more than I do my own friends and family.
Really? So
yep. I know I'm weird. I'm different than like everyone else.
No, but I think that's interesting too. If you're presenting a game to non-gamers, I must imagine that the type of feedback that you get, right? The lens with which they view the game has to be significantly different, right?
Oh, it's so different. They don't know any of the gaming terms, which I'm not going to lie, like before Ryan, he taught me all the gaming terms. Like I played games, but I didn't know what a worker placement was or a deck builder. And I still have discussions trying to figure out what an abstract, like, can you have an abstract with a theme? Like things like that. But yeah, no, my friends, I have to not like dumb it down at all, but I think that's another reason I'm theme focused is I have to paint a story. Like I tell the rules as a story because that's how it connects with them. And mechanic wise, like I can't say, oh, set collection. It's like, yeah, I can say like you're collecting cards that look similar or like have the same backing or numbers or whatever. So it's like I kind of have to go into more detail with different terms. It's interesting. And another reason I don't really play test a lot of my games with them, unless it's like, I mean, Rubbish is their favorite because it's so easy to play. And then things like Curbside, I never really tested with them because it's like a little more advanced. So depending on the game is like what I tested.
Right. You know your audience.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it was always good because you get the supportive feedback, but they have no comparison to anything else in that like genre. So you get the real feedback of is it a good game for a non-gamer, but you definitely don't get it in comparison to what they're going to compete against on the shelf if it gets signed. So it's kind of like a weird, like it's good feedback, but not always the best feedback.
Gotcha.
Trying to be supportive.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I would certainly, my group of friends, like I would have to play test with strangers because my buddies know how fragile I am. And so they would just keep their mouths shut, right?
Maybe you need to work on taking feedback.
You're absolutely absolutely right. And it's just so true.
Yeah, my way of doing it, I'm just light. I joke, like during all my playtests, I've been told like I'm very easy to play test with because I literally don't care. Like I want the feedback good or bad. And I just don't care. Like I just want it to be a good experience for the person because they're giving me time out of their life and time is almost as important as money.
I often contend that the most important thing you have in your life is time. It is precious and it is the only thing you have any control over. Right? I mean, the government doesn't come in and take my time. You know, they can't. Yeah, right? Well, don't get me started on that. Oh, Danielle Reynolds, it has been, I mean, truly, just, you're a remarkable person. I sincerely, your parents have got to be so fucking proud of you. But again, it is dmrccreativegroup.com. On Instagram, you are Token Gamer with a Y. And on Facebook, it is the DMR Creative Group. Well, podcaster, game designer Danielle Reynolds, thank you so much for your precious time. I really appreciate it.
Of course. No, thanks for having me on. Hopefully I helped somebody.
Why We Game is a production of the Influence Foundation. All rights reserved. Audio editing by Brodor. Music by Owen Godwin.